Yesterday, the Syrian town of Khan Sheikhoun was the target of a chemical weapons attack that's left somewhere between 70 and 100 people dead, many of them children. Now, we don't know exactly what chemical was used as of when we're filming this. Investigations are ongoing. But at this point, it looks like it is the worst chemical weapons attack in years in Syria. A team from medical charity MSF, that's Doctors Without Borders, treating victims in Idlib, that's the province where Khan Sheikhoun is, found patients' symptoms were consistent with exposure to a neurotoxic agent such as sarin gas, although there are also reports that speculate that some sort of chlorine-based weapon might have been used as well. Now, there has been international outcry about this attack. Thankfully, people paying attention once again to the great deal of suffering there. I want to give you a warning though. We're going to be showing some photos to give you a sense of how tragic, how awful this attack was. But these are, of course, incredibly graphic images. And so if you do not want to be exposed to those, you'll probably want to click away from this video. But as we continue, we are going to be showing you some of those photos.
So just a quick note here before we go any further about the ramifications and our reaction is that I just want to give credit to people at Doctors Without Borders and the United Nations and all the people who, as people are rushing away, very, very understandably so, from chemical attacks, they go in to help people who desperately, desperately need that help. I'm not sure there are more courageous people in the world than these folks.
Going to a place that you know was just struck.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's two additional reasons why that's 100% true. One, a couple of hours after the initial chemical weapons attack, several hospitals in the area were then struck. And so it looked like they were trying to wipe out the people who survived the initial attack and also those who were helping them. And additionally, there are reports of people seeing doctors from various organizations and aid groups coming in to help people, and then those people falling unconscious as a result of the lingering chemical weapon of whatever type it was in the area. Now, of course, there's going to be a complicated response on a couple of fronts from the US, but overall, the US, Britain, and France have proposed a draft UN Security Council resolution that would condemn the attack. And they are, of course, pointing the finger at the Assad regime. Now, not everyone is happy about that resolution, particularly Russia, who has threatened to veto any resolution that tries to pin the blame for this on the Assad regime. Of course, Russia, a gigantic political and military ally of Assad in Syria. Now we have a response from the Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson trying to sort of muddy the issue about who exactly was responsible for the attack. This is Igor Konashenskoy, who said, yesterday Syrian aviation made a strike on a large terrorist ammunition depot and a concentration of military hardware in the eastern outskirts of Khan Sheikhoun town. On the territory of the depot, there were workshops which produced chemical warfare munitions. So they are trying to say that it was in fact rebel groups in the area that had been producing chemical weapons, and as a result of the Assad regime destroying those depots, that's what caused people to become sick. But chemical weapons experts are saying that that is complete BS. For one, the time that was listed by that Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson was hours after the initial reports of the chemical weapons attack happened, and chemical weapons experts say that the construction of these weapons, the manufacture of them, is so complex that blowing up the building they were being produced in is not enough to then spread that material across an area as large as a town. That's not actually how it works.
There's something weird about this story. So no one is arguing it how horrific it is, and you see the dead children lying there having been killed by a gas attack, and it's the most revolting thing you've ever seen. The question is who did it, and we in the West are saying in unison that it's Assad. The reason I hesitate, John, is because right now Assad is winning. He's got an enormous upper hand. He's got Russia on his side and had the US on his side. Why would he try to take, basically snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory? It is it's weird timing. So,
yes, that does seem to make sense. It might be though that actually the timing makes a lot of sense. So we were a couple of months into a new presidency. He knows roughly how Obama responded the last time he tried to use chemical weapons, which was of course mixed. That's why we're in the situation that we're in. It might be that this is an intentional test of what Donald Trump will do. How will he respond to it?
I know, but
will
why
people
would you
even pay
test
attention?
them? But Trump's on your side.
Well, because he would still like to use those weapons. They're winning, but this thing isn't in the bag. They're not. I mean, they still need to use what they can use.
The more we talk about it, the more I'm not buying it. Because if Trump is already on your side, you've got the United States and Russia on your side. He's letting you run roughshod. He doesn't care at all what you're doing to the civilian population as you theoretically fight ISIS and the other rebels that are not ISIS. And then you're gonna test them? You're gonna risk turning the US against you? Look, that makes no sense.
It's entirely possible. I'm not saying I know who did it. I'm just giving you, outside of the Russian Defense Ministry and Assad himself, the experts are saying this. I'm simply passing that on.
No, I hear you.
And they're right, the timeline that was laid out there was not accurate. That's not actually when the attack happened. And we're getting lots of reports from the people either that are still in the area who survived the attack or the people who fled, talking about what the planes looked like, how the attack was carried out. They said that the gas did come from the sky descending down. It wasn't simply a building that blew up. And so look, we're less than 1 day out from this attack. It's a complex situation. Yeah. It might be that there's some other explanation that neither of us is thinking of at this time.
Yeah, exactly. So that explanation, I always like to be like, what's the rest of that thought? Whose motivation would it be for this to happen?
So now we're gonna get into wild speculation. But look, first let me acknowledge, sure, it could be the Russian government just thinking, hey, there are no rules anymore, let me go nuts, right? Or let the Syrians go nuts.
Yeah, no one at this point is saying that the Russian government conducted the attack, just that they're providing sort of cover in the UN for Syria.
Yeah, they let their allies, they think that there's no brakes left in the car. Entirely possible. Could it be that Bashar al-Assad, the dictator, miscalculated and again thought there's no check on me anymore, I can do whatever I want? Of course that could be the case. Okay, but it would be an incredibly stupid move as they're winning and on the precipice of what appears to be victory for their side. To risk that victory is so monumentally dumb.
Well, I'm gonna lay out in just a second some of the reasons why he might legitimately suspect that Trump would not go in regardless of what he does there.
I hear you. So, but JR asked, so I'll give that a little bit of speculation. The Russians think, okay, we let the Syrians do this, or somebody does it. Then Trump chastises us and shows how much he's against us and can stand up to us. But on something that doesn't cost us any money. I want the oil, I want the sanctions lifted, I want to deal with ExxonMobil. We're gonna win again anyway in Syria. But we let Trump be tough and oppose us.
Which is what he's doing today.
And then all of a sudden, Trump wins, Russia diverts your attention from what their real goals are. And it doesn't really cost that much because the next day they're gonna go back to letting the Syrians bomb the hell out of the opposition.
After all, the looking tough so far is speaking tough. It's not actually doing anything yet. So let's turn to the response. So immediately after the news broke that so many civilians had died in this attack in Syria using the chemical weapons, a statement was put out by the Trump administration laying the blame on the party that's obviously responsible for it, Barack Obama, because of his actions in the past. And so there's a written statement, we'll get to that in just a second. But today, Trump came out in a press conference and he continued that line of attack, which you're gonna see.
I think the Obama administration had a great opportunity to solve this crisis a long time ago when he said the red line in the sand. And when he didn't cross that line after making the threat, I think that set us back a long ways, not only in Syria, but in many other parts of the world, because it was a blank threat. I think it was something that was not one of our better days as a country. So I do feel that, Julie, I feel it very strongly.
Do you feel like you now have the responsibility to respond to the chemical attack?
I now have responsibility, and I will have that responsibility and carry it very proudly. I will tell you that. It is now my responsibility. It was a great opportunity missed.
And so look, this is coming less than a day after the initial statement, which I'm now gonna read. So they read this statement, they get the response. People don't like that you're trying to get political points off of attacking Obama in response to a terrible attack. But they're continuing with it, Spicer as well, saying much the same thing. Here's the original statement. This is almost the entire statement, by the way. Today's chemical attack in Syria against innocent people, including women and children, is reprehensible and cannot be ignored by the civilized world. That's perfectly fine. These heinous actions by the Bashar al-Assad regime are a consequence of the past administration's weakness and irresolution. President Obama said in 2012 that he would establish a red line against the use of chemical weapons and then did nothing. That again is almost the entirety of their original statement, which they're sticking by. And it's interesting because there he's saying Obama was stupid and weak and didn't do what he needed to do in past years in regards to Syria, leading one to believe perhaps that had it been President Trump at that time, he would have acted differently, which is a bit odd because in his favorite venue for expression, Twitter, he actually spoke out quite a bit about Syria at the time. We're not gonna read all of these tweets, but there's at least 13 times where he specifically told Obama not to get involved, not to attack the Assad regime or engage with US forces. So we're just gonna show you a couple pages of these tweets. Time after time after time. You can go on to the next one. Specifically saying we won't get anything for it would be stupid to attack, why would you do it, focus on the US. What I am saying is stay out of Syria. You can move on again to the next one. Using full caps there, President Obama, do not attack Syria. We must stay focused on our country. Forget Syria and make America great again. He was actually using it back in 2013. Forget Syria, do not attack, over and over and over again. I don't think it's been brought up at the press conferences, at least what I've seen. But once again, he gets to rewrite history and say it was just that weak-ass President Obama not doing what he should have done.
So a small correction, and then we're going to go again to Trump, who now apparently proudly has that responsibility. What does that mean?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, so they keep saying that Obama did nothing. That's not true. They struck a deal where they removed the chemical weapons from Syria into Russia. Now, it's a very fair point to say, well, it looks like they didn't get all the chemical weapons. So now if
they did, and they went to Russia temporarily.
And now they're back.
Speculation.
So that part we don't know, and we don't know who has those chemical weapons. If it turns out that Russia and Syria did not hold up their end of the bargain and did not remove the chemical weapons, okay, then you can say, hey, they shouldn't have trusted them and that they did not, they should have had them made sure that they executed that deal better. That's a fair criticism, right? But it's not that they didn't get nothing in return. It appeared that they got all the chemical weapons out of Syria in return.
Certainly the attacks seemed, there were scattered reports, but generally it seemed like the reports of the attacks went away.
Absolutely, after that deal, for a long stretch of years. So it was, they threatened Syria and Syria got scared and removed their chemical weapons. That's not nothing, that was their objective, okay? So now we move on to the proud responsibility that Donald Trump has. So, Joe Obama, you should have attacked, except for at the time I was saying he shouldn't have attacked at all.
Over and over and over.
Now he says that the chemical attacks, quote, crosses many lines, beyond a red line, many lines. Here, you want to show it?
Yeah, why don't we go, here's a couple of his comments where he's trying inartfully to express his new views on Assad and Syria.
If the chemical attack crosses a red line for you?
It crossed a lot of lines for me. When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, little babies, with a chemical gas that is so lethal, people were shocked to hear what gas it was. That crosses many lines, beyond the red line, many lines. I like to think of myself as a very flexible person. I don't have to have one specific way, and if the world changes, I go the same way. I don't change. Well, I do change, and I am flexible, and I'm proud of that flexibility. And I will tell you that attack on children yesterday had a big impact on me. Big impact. That was a horrible thing. And I've been watching it and seeing it, and it doesn't get any worse than that. And I have that flexibility, and it's very possible. And I will tell you, it's already happened, that my attitude toward Syria and Assad has changed very much.
Okay, so he previously apparently didn't have a bad opinion of Assad and Syria? Has he not been paying attention? Apparently, he's been tweeting for years about Syria. Well, didn't really dislike Assad though, apparently. There's still room for change.
So when Assad first used chemical weapons, and at that time he was desperate and he was losing,
yes,
okay,
yeah.
that it seemed to be, okay, I understand why he used chemical weapons at the time, which was horrific. That made sense in his dictatorial, massacring ways, right? So at the time, apparently Trump thought it was no big deal.
Yeah.
Even though he says,
don't go in.
He says Obama should have gone to war over it because he said the red line and he then didn't do anything about it. But Trump just told you he changed his mind on Assad. So the first time he used chemical weapons, that wasn't a big deal to you.
Well, he said, don't go in. So if we hadn't done any of what Obama did, theoretically, Assad would have kept his chemical weapons, would have kept using them on children, on babies, on little babies. He would have kept doing it, you idiot. But now he's pretending that everything's changed because of this one attack.
Yeah, so then you just said it crossed many, many lines. So what are we doing? Are we going to war? You just criticized Obama for not going to war after he said he crossed the line. And you just said it crossed the red line and many, many lines. Yeah. Does that mean we're going to war?
In terms of the rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration, you have Trump saying, we've crossed these lines, things have changed. You also, by the way, have Nikki Haley. So she's ambassador to the UN. She's at an emergency meeting of the Security Council, which is tense right now because a lot of the members of the Security Council want a resolution condemning this action. Russia, another member of the Security Council, going against that. So now we have Nikki Haley. We're gonna show you a portion of her speech where she really is not pulling any punches.
We cannot close our eyes to those pictures. We cannot close our minds of the responsibility to act. We know that yesterday's attack bears all the hallmarks of the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons. We all also know this. Just a few weeks ago, this council attempted to hold Assad accountable for suffocating his own people to death with toxic chemicals. Russia stood in the way of this accountability. They made an unconscionable choice. They chose to close their eyes to the barbarity. They defied the conscience of the world. Russia cannot escape responsibility for this. In fact, if Russia had been fulfilling its responsibility, there would not even be any chemical weapons left for the Syrian regime to use. Assad has no incentive to stop using chemical weapons as long as Russia continues to protect his regime from consequences. Time and time again, Russia uses the same false narrative to deflect attention from their allies in Damascus. There is an obvious truth here that must be spoken. The truth is that Assad, Russia, and Iran have no interest in peace. How many more children have to die before Russia cares?
There's something super fishy about this story.
Well, look, we're less than a day in. Of course, there's gonna be a lot of investigations. I mean, there was a ton of footage of the attack. That footage can be analyzed now that we have some time. More and more experts are gonna come out and talk. Like, we can speculate about the current state of the military conflict in Syria, and we have some information because we do our reading and we do our research, but neither of us are experts on it. It might be that the situation in certain regions is more complex than we thought. It might be that it's some other group than we knew. It might be that theoretically it is possible that you can just blow up a depot that supposedly was making chemical weapons and that distributes it evenly throughout a town.
Yeah,
anything is possible at this point.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, the Russian explanation sucks. I'm not buying that either. And just as our intelligence agencies want to go on the warpath against Russia, there's a perfect excuse to go on the warpath against Russia.
Well, disagreeing with him at the UN. I mean, Assad is far more in the path of this war.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know, there's something wrong with this story. But we don't have enough information for me to tell you conclusively. To tell you conclusively what's going on, or even to have solid speculation on what's going on. But there's something weird here. Okay,
and it's horrific when you see those photos and you see the video of the people like foaming at the mouth, like suffocating, choking to death in the streets of a town that, because it's chemical weapons, doesn't look like it's necessarily in the middle of the war in the same way. It's difficult to deal with. It's one of the reasons that these weapons are considered so distinct from others by most people.
Yeah, so let me end on two things on this. One, now that Trump has drawn a line in the sand, in fact, he's drawn many, many lines in the sand I hope that the media follows up. Now, look, I don't want to go to war with Syria, so that's I'm half hoping yes, half hoping no. But what's he going to do? Is he going to do the same thing as Obama, draw a line and then not do anything about it? Or is he going to attack Assad? And when he does, the Russians will help Assad. And are we going to get into an armed conflict with Russia? He said he was going to stay out of the mess in the Middle East. So as usual, I don't think he has any idea what he's doing, and he will probably violate. He can't help but violate one of those two promises.
Well, yeah, and by the way, for him, the same as for Obama, it's entirely possible that there are no good options here. There might be, if you were to run a complex computer simulation, a best choice you could make. But it might be that because of the situation that to some extent we as a country are responsible for producing, at least in part, that there's no good option. Staying out could lead to horrible things happening. Going in various ways could lead to horrible things happening.
And then finally, look, this isn't on us, the US. Someone else did this, hard to tell exactly who. But we have this shocked and chagrin thing that these civilians died. And it is, you look at it, it's horrific. It doesn't get any worse than that. And it's a gas attack, and there's something visceral about it that we feel defenseless, and hence we get more upset about it. But we've been reporting to you guys for weeks that we have had errant bombs that have killed hundreds of civilians in the same Syria. So when we kill those civilians, also men, women, and children, but it's with a conventional bomb rather than a chemical attack, the UN isn't on fire, the US isn't on fire, nobody cares. Now, and Trump brags about, yeah, I was gonna kill their family members. And that's what he said on the campaign trail.
Civilians.
And he does it, he kills the family members. He killed an 8-year-old.
He showed you the numbers, huge spike in civilian deaths in just the first couple of months of his presidency.
In the Yemen raid, 30 people, civilians killed, including 8 children, including an 8-year-old. So, and then, like I said, dozens of civilians killed in each attack, 201 attack by us in Syria. Nary a peep from the mainstream media. When we do it, it's not that big a deal. When someone else does it, let's go to war. So I'm not saying that it's not horrific. I'm saying both are horrific.
Yeah.
And be careful of the agenda that's being thrown out here, because when you see the media and the establishment turn its head in this way, there's some coordinated effort here.
Yeah.
And so be careful where they're going. Our journalism drive is almost over. It ends in Trump's first 100 days. We need to hire more reporters and more watchdogs. Let's do that right now at tytnetwork.com/go.